Hi, and welcome to a quick video explaining the different types of backups and how you can structure them. So for this, we're going to go over the four types: incremental, differential, full, and reverse incremental. So in this example, we're going to have the raw data. This is your actual server, how much data is on there, and how each backup type treats this data. So if you start with just the raw data of A, incremental its first backup would be a full copy of that. It would have A. Differential would do the same, and so would full. Let's say now you add some data, so now you have AB. Incremental would only copy B for the next backup. Differential would also only copy B for the next backup, whereas a full backup would copy AB. This would continue with incremental only copying the C. Differential, however, now would copy B and C and leave off A. And full would, of course, do A, B, and C. Again with D, incremental only copies the data D. Differential copies B, C, D, everything it's missed since A. And full copies A, B, C, and D. Reverse incremental works the same way as incremental, only it does it reverses the order in which the files are. So on a regular incremental backup, you first take a full backup, you then create a copy of just the data that's changed, and then the data that's changed since then, and then the data that's changed since then. With reverse incremental, it of course starts with the full backup, but then when you create that first incremental, it copies that data into the full and creates a file logging the differences basically and copying the differences so that if you need to restore to that different point, you still can. Then you create a new one, it injects it into the full. The advantage of this is you'll always have the most recent backup be a full backup, which I'll get into a little later as to why you would want to do that. Backup type size comparison. Okay, so let's say for the sake of argument that your data on your server is a large amount of data, and then each plus symbol will represent a little addition as it grows over time. The incremental would of course start with a large amount of data and then add a little bit on each time. The differential would start with a large amount of data, add a little bit, then add a little bit more, and then even more. The full would just continuously be getting bigger and bigger. Now, why are there different types? It all comes down to data loss versus how much storage you're going to be using. With an incremental, the way it works, on the first full backup, every single backup after that relies not only on that full backup, but on every backup in the chain. In this example, if your D backup in an incremental backup were to get lost or corrupted, and I've seen many corrupted incremental backups in my life, you could no longer restore to this point or any point on the chain after that. Even though these are not lost or corrupted, they're now useless. With differential, the only thing you need is the full original backup as well as any one of the differential points. So if this one were to get lost, these would all still be usable. However, if the full were lost, all the differentials that came after it would be useless. And this is why it's called differential, because it's taking a full backup and then it's taking the difference between now and that full backup. So the difference between A and ABCD is BCD. So that's what it backs up, BCD. With a full backup, it doesn't matter what you lose. The first backup, middle backup, anything. Whatever backups you still have remaining and uncorrupted are restorable. One thing people do to reduce this risk, and you should definitely do, is schedule occasional full backups. You don't want to have everything relying, if you're doing incremental or differential, on that one full backup and then risk having things get lost. So in this case, you have A, B, C, D, E, and you schedule a new full backup of A, B, C, D, E, F. Now the incremental starts over again with just G now, because now it has a new full backup to fall back on. And then H, and the differential, the same thing, all the way through F, and then it just does G, and then it starts over counting the differences. G, H, now counting the differences to the last full backup. Backup storage space. In this example, I'm going to say your server started as 100 gigabytes, and that each day that we ran a backup, it increased by 10 gigabytes. So 1, 110, 120, 130, all the way up. At the most current time, your server's sitting there at 170 gigabytes of storage taken up. Incremental, although it's the most riskiest in terms of if you lose a file, you lose ones after it, takes up the least amount of space. So you have all these backups, it takes up a total of 310 gigabytes of backup space, because each one of these is only 10 gigabytes. This full is 150 and this full is 100. Differential is safer but takes up more space. In this example, that those same things being backed up would take up 380 gigs of space. And full is, of course, the most ridiculous amount of space to have, 8 backups here, taking up a terabyte of data for 170 gig storage. Now, if you have plenty of backup storage, you can do that, but they also take a lot longer to run, so you have to keep that in mind as well. You know, it might eat up bandwidth, processing power, depending on what you're using there. And that's basically it. Personally, I like reverse incremental the best because it has a very nice way of reducing the risk. Of course, there is still risk with incremental, but I'm not affluent on storage space, so I like reverse incremental the best. Differential is definitely safer if you have the space, though. And that's it.